the way he approached it. What Williams was saying is, I'm part of the New York scene that you had down here in the Village. Right around 1913, well, the Great Armory Show of 1913 that occurred here, right? And what the American poets were looking at is, look at what these French painters are doing. How can we break the form? How can we do something similar in our own poetry? So you find Stevens. Now Stevens will stay pretty much with the blank verse line, pretty much, or the tetrameter. He'll use a four-stress line, and he stays pretty much within that. Williams is continually trying to break it. Whatever form you have, he will break it, make it his own. So you say, well, is that formlessness? No. I think as you read the poems, they hold together. Now there may be a lot of internal chiming, for example. There might be a lot of, the rhyming is not at the end of the line, it might be literally in the middle of the line, okay? A line that music, you've got some kind of musical pattern, a grid, and then you've got the spoken voice working over that music. Each one of these is different. In Philip Levine's and Galway Kinnell's generation, James Wright, okay, in other words, poets who were born around the year 1927, Robert Creeley, people like Allen Ginsberg, okay, they are looking for a new way of approaching the poem. Many of them will start out using rhyme. You know, they'll use the traditional forms, the traditional meters. So did Williams start out that way. But then they have to break it. They have to somehow find a way to make it their own. Now, depending how conservative or how, what should we call it, conservative and experimental you are, you will either return to the grid like Stevens did. Stevens pretty much stayed within, like Robert Frost, okay, staying within that form. Others will purposely break it again to see what new they can make. And believe me, I'm still talking about relatively conservative poets. There are a lot of poets out there, the language poets, who are going much further, you know, in the French tradition as well. So, I mean, I could go on, but we could, you know, but this is a start. Okay, this is a start.
What about you? Huh? What about yours?
Yeah, okay, mine. I started out writing sonnets, okay? In other words, I started writing traditional forms back in, when I just started out back in the late 60s. And then I became influenced by different poets, and I said, look, especially Williams. Williams had a profound impact on me. This is why another reason why I wanted to write an 800-page biography of the guy. I wanted to know how the hell he did it, okay, step by step. And so I broke the lines, and I said, okay, I'm going to find a music within the lines. One of the things I will do, for example, is I often use, I don't know if I did it, yeah, I did, quatrains. That's a way, see, there's a pattern, it's like a step ladder. Okay, so at least you've got this pattern. And within that, not to deviate too far, but to stay pretty close to either a quatrain, a tetrameter line or a pentameter line, okay? Now, I've also written sestinas, I've written dazzles, I've really tried to do it all, okay? What I find for me is that as I get older, I return to more of the traditional forms. Okay, that's just where I'm coming from, you know. Terza Rima, Dante, I love Dante, so he gets in there. But who knows where the next poem is going to come from? Sometimes I'll start out, I'll say, okay, I am going to write a sonnet, or I'm going to write this form or that form, and I'll follow through. Others I'll say, the hell with it. I'm just going to go with this, wherever the poem leads me, and I go with it that way. Yeah. There's a question.
There was a question there before.
Question, just more curiosity. You mentioned that you worked with police officers in the city.
About the police officers?
Yeah, your work with the police officers.
Yes, what was that like, teaching the police?
Well, I was curious, and then that beautiful Sharon Olds poem that showed such a nurturing role of the police officers. I was curious if you wanted to share any of the experience you might have had working with police.
Working with the police?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. It was cool. It was really, in fact, I got along pretty well with the cops.
What year was that?
Huh?
What year?
Oh, yeah. This was I was going for my PhD. So John Jay was just opening. They were experimenting with the idea of police officers getting a degree in humanities. Well, actually, it would have been criminal justice, but they had to take a number of courses in humanities. So they asked who would volunteer for this kind of thing. I said, I'll do it, among others. So I'd take the train downtown, the subway from 68th Street in Hunter, come down, and I would teach a course, say from 11 to 12 or something like that. Then I'd have to wait 8 hours because the next shift. And then the cops, the police officers would come in and you teach it in the evening, okay? It was a blast. You had all different kinds of police officers, I remember there were a lot of older officers who were trying to get their degree, in criminal justice. I remember one cop saying, he dropped me off at the gas station, at the train station, and he said, I'm glad you're teaching this course because I'm learning a lot of things because I used to just think a lot of these people were bullshit. Okay. So I said, okay, all right. So that was one take, if you will. I remember Frank Serpico because at this time the Knapp Commission was going on, and Eileen and I double dated. I don't know if you ever saw Frank Serpico. Al Pacino. Played the part of. He did a great job, by the way. He was great. It was Frank. Okay. So just to stick with Frank for a minute. So we would double date, and he'd take us down to the village, and he'd show us where the mafia lived. Which apartments they lived in. Okay. And then we'd go into a little pizza place, and Frank would say something, and they would bring out some wine, grappa, okay, that they had in the back. That they didn't have a license for it, but they brought it out and they would have a little wine, which was a nice thing too. It's funny. I didn't see Frank. He got shot. About a year later. I was just beginning to teach. Eileen is reading the book, and I said, honey, this book about Serpico, he said, dummy, that is him. So I wrote a poem about Frank. Yeah. One of the things we would do after I would teach the police officers, they would invite me down to Rooney's Bar, down on the corner, and we'd have a couple of nightcaps, okay, and then some whiskey, maybe with beer chases, that kind of thing, but they taught me a lot about, good stuff, okay, so one night I said to Frank, why don't you come on down with us? And so we were going to get on the elevator, and there were about 8 police officers on the elevator, and they were looking at him. And he said, I'll meet you downstairs. Something was going on, you know what I mean? So I went down to the bar, with the other police officers, and waited for Frank. And so we started talking, and I remember one, am I going to get shot for telling, let me see. Don't tell it no more, honey? Okay. Okay. Some other time. Anyway, there's a lot of good stories. Okay. Sorry. No, I think there was a question over here. Yeah.
Will you say a little bit about the life of Wallace Stevens and your take on the life of Wallace Stevens?
Yeah, the life of Wallace Stevens. That was the hardest thing I ever did, honestly. If you look at it from the outside, it's not a very dramatic life. There are a couple of moments. For example, when he gets into a fist fight with Hemingway down in Key West. That's an interesting moment. You know what I mean? He's drunk. He's staying at the Hotel Marina down in Key West, and he goes to a friend of Ernest Hemingway's house, and he starts insulting Hemingway, and Hemingway's sister is there, okay? And she starts to cry. She goes across, about a quarter of a mile away to where Hemingway's living. You know, the house is still there. You can visit it, right? Hemingway comes back. It's been raining. It just stopped raining. There's a puddle out on the street. Stevens is 6'2". He's a big man, okay? But he's 56 years old, and Hemingway's 36. And Hemingway's also a very good boxer. Stevens just, I thought, with, you know, maybe with his size he could take Hemingway, but it doesn't work that way. So he hits Hemingway in the jaw, and he breaks his hand. How's that? He breaks his hand in 2 places. Hemingway smiles and does the job on him. Knocks him down. Stevens gets up again, etc. But anyway, Judge Powell, who was a friend of both of them, said, "Now, Hem, I want a fair fight here, Hem. You take off your glasses." But I'll tell you, a week later, after Stevens' hand had, you know, the nurses came, the doctors, etc. He went over and he apologized. He apologized both to Hemingway for being a stupid jerk, and to his sister, okay, as well. So there's this side to him. He was a guy who liked his martinis, if you're looking for that. But the real Stevens is the interior, is the imagination, and how do you make that live? How do you bring that interior world out to an audience? That's the challenge. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We finished.
There's room for one more question.
This one right there.
Rose?
Good.
I'm just wondering, so not only have you, written about poets and written poetry, but you've also taught literature for a long time, and I'm wondering if you have any advice for people who are, who are teaching literature now, what several of us here are, and I would just love to know, what do you think, as going into the next generation of people teaching about poetry and teaching poetry?
You mean the question is, how do you teach the poetry?
Well, just do you have any advice for
Who are
younger
teaching poetry?
people who are teaching poetry now?
You have to love it, first of all. Because I've taught people who did not love it, and you could tell within 5 minutes that they didn't, that it was like pulling teeth. You know what I mean? And you'll meet a lot of people on airplanes, buses, and things like that who tell you, "Gee, I've never read much poetry, and I don't think I'm going to." There is something out there, a kind of antagonism. They get nervous if you say, "Well, I'm a poet." Well, what do you do for a living? I mean, really, So you have to be passionate about it. You have to convince them that you love this stuff, that there's something there. And then you have to show them, or begin to show them. And then they're going to teach you. They're going to teach you as well. That's the beauty of it. It works both ways. I love it when a student says, "Well, is it possible that?" And I say, "Of course it is. That's great. That's what a great insight." So you do that for 53 years, like I did. It's been a blast. It's been a blast. Yeah. Okay. Good call.
Thank you very much again. Just two big announcements. So I'd like to mention the 2018 New York Encounter Poetry Contest. Dana Joya is the guest judge, and the theme is the same as the theme for New York Encounter of 2018. That is an impossible unity. There's no entrance fee, but there is a cash prize, and the 3 winners will read to a large audience on the New York Encounter stage. For more information, go to www.newyorkencounter.org 2018-poetry-contest. Our next event will be really special. It is the 2017 Albacete Lecture on Faith and Culture that we established to honor the memory of Monsignor Lorenzo Albacete, who chaired the Crossroads Advisory Board for its establishment in 2007, until he passed away in 2014. On October 13 at 7 p.m. at the Sheen Center, again, October 13 at 7 p.m. at the Sheen Center. Father Julian Caron, professor of theology at the Catholic University of the Sacred Heart in Milan, and president of the Fraternity of Communal Liberation, will speak on faith, truth, and freedom on the threshold of a new epoch. In the footsteps of his recently released book, which is titled Disarming Beauty, Father Caron will offer a broad analysis of the pressing questions facing today's society, from education to social integration, from motivating youth to family life. The event is open and free of charge, but since seats are limited, it requires a reservation by going on the Sheen Center website. You can also enroll on our email list if you wish to receive updates about our activities at the registration desk where Stephen is, right there. Okay, all the events are free of charge, so even this one. In order to defray, though, the expenses of tonight's event, we invite you warmly to consider a donation which you can place in the box at the exit, which Stephen has and Rose will collect as well. Yes, and so thank you for your contribution, or eventual contribution, possible contribution, and have a good night.